If you're a fan of boxing, you're a fan of what took place last night. I mean, a real fan. And I'm going to get into what I mean. If you're a fan of boxing, for real, I need to know why the level of hate for Gervonta Tank Davis is so high. This is your boy, JG. This is the Punch Report. In this video, I have questions for boxing fans in lieu of what took place last night. Let's just get into it right now. First and foremost, for those of you who don't know, you haven't been to this channel before, what I do primarily is break down fights and fighters. Jabs, footwork, strengths and weaknesses, resume conversation, that kind of deal. I stay away from promoter talk, contract talk, WBC contract language, any sanctioning body for that matter. I avoid these topics of conversation because I really want to focus on what the fighters do well, how they apply themselves in the instance of pugilism, the sport of boxing. But in this video, I'm going to do something I've never done before. I need to know what's going on. Now, as a caveat, I do not watch a lot of boxing YouTube. I used to back in the day. But more recently, especially since I've gotten into doing videos and creating content myself, I don't watch a lot of boxing YouTube. Well, for whatever strange reason or another, this morning I decided, you know what? Tank Davis had a sensational knockout last night. Frank Martin came in, looked sharp and strong. Let me just see what the temperature is on YouTube on how this fight is being received. Well, that was a fucking mistake. Excuse my language. That was a absolutely horrendous mistake. I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to point you to the direction of channels, but let me tell you some things that I've seen. I saw a full-blown live stream dedicated to the fact that Gervonta Tank Davis is apparently on PEDs, and no one knew this. He is a juicer, and that's why he beat Frank Martin last night. I saw another stream that stated that, this one was actually yesterday, where I saw a full-blown stream breaking down why Frank Martin would cook Gervonta Tank Davis just for that same streamer to come back and say, well, you know, Frank Martin didn't have enough experience. This is why I struggle at times in the space of boxing on YouTube, because more often than not, people are not being realistic. So my question to you is this, before I continue this video. If you feel a certain way about Tank Davis, I want you to put that in the comment section. And my hope is that it's something boxing related, or you're not just fanboying for someone, because one of the things that allows me to do a really great job with predictions, I did a prediction for this fight yesterday. That video is still up. I said Gervonta Tank Davis by stoppage round 7, 8, or 9 for the reasons of there's a lack of variety in the lead hand for Frank Martin. He doesn't fight well going backwards. If Tank Davis puts a lot of pressure on him, it's probably going to be a short night. And the overall inexperience / experience of one Gervonta Tank Davis versus Frank Martin that would carry him through. These are the reasons why I provided, boxing reasons, why I provided that Tank Davis would get it done against Frank Martin. So my hope is that at that request, you guys have something similar for me. Now, moving right along. Floyd Mayweather released 18-minute long tape of sparring from like 10 years ago after Gervonta Tank Davis scored a sensational knockout after another star-studded and successful event and pay-per-view. Shout out to him. He wants to be petty and play games. That's what's up. But this goes to my next point, where you wake up in the morning after a night of boxing where you had Gary Antoine Russell take a loss, you had Cyril Matisse lose, you had David Benavidez making his debut at 175, ends up getting injured after, disclosing that he had injury after the bout and declaring he's going back down to 168. In the main event, two undefeated fighters, Gervonta Tank Davis, Frank the Ghost Martin, collide for as long as it was, a good bout, good chess match. Frank Martin definitely did some things very well in this particular bout, but ends up being brutally knocked out in the 8th round. And the topic of conversation on your channel is sparring tape between Devin Haney and Gervonta Tank Davis. Everything I just said, throw that shit out the window. We want to talk about old sparring tape. This is why I just don't even participate in boxing YouTube. And what's crazy is the level of support for these old ass stale conversations about fighters who just got cooked. That being Devin Haney versus Ryan Garcia, got folded like laundry, folded like a love letter, folded like a lawn chair. That being Devin Haney. But we want to talk about I beat you up in sparring. He put that on his Instagram this morning. Look what I did to Tank Davis X amount of years ago. You just got cooked by Ryan Garcia, dude that Tank Davis knocked out to the body. you're still suspended by INSAC because you took such a brutal beating by the hands of Ryan Garcia, a dude who didn't even train for real. So at what point in time are we going to start talking about actual boxing, the fighters, how they match up, and what we want to see next? Because that conversation I'm willing to have. If someone presents the argument that I wish Tank Davis fought better opposition, I wouldn't be particularly upset about that. But this symptom of boxing and how it's set up is not new or unique to Tank Davis. And probably the hate isn't new or unique to Tank Davis. But you get in there against young and hungry guys, undefeated guys, and you start cooking people and knocking people out. Who are Tank's last two opponents? Ryan Garcia stopped him. Hector Luis Garcia before that stopped him. He couldn't see. And brutally knocked out last night Frank Martin. But you want to talk about sparring tapes from 10 years ago, 11 years ago, of a dude who just got cooked by Ryan Garcia, had a bad business operation the entire time, and now he's celebrating on the internet because Floyd leaked the tape because he's mad at Tank Davis, and that's your angle, that's your approach. This shit is unacceptable. But too many of us as boxing fans, we like this. We accept this. We go to these channels and like, yeah, did you see that? See what Devin did to him 10 years ago? Devin can't even eat probably good out of a regular spoon or fork. Putting up old sparring videos. Put up a video of Ryan Garcia cooking with the same shot over and over again. Put that video up. Or don't put anything up. Go back to the drawing board. Establish a legitimate team. A legitimate business professional team. They handle finances and contract negotiation language, things of that nature. And a legitimate training team who will be honest with you about where you're deficient defensively. One of the things I've always said about Devin Haney, he's a tremendously talented offensive fighter. I said that on purpose because defensively, based on my eye, he's been deficient. These shots that he was getting caught with, he's been getting hit with those. Ryan Garcia was just big, strong, and fast, and he took care of business. But you want to talk about Tank Davis sparring, which everyone knows he's coming off of a flight out of shape, you in shape. And he decides he want to bail out. Tank Davis cashed a big check last night. Last time I checked, Devin Haney's pay-per-view numbers haven't dropped. For those of you who so fervently support your fighter, I'm not mad about that, but you got to operate from a realistic perspective. This is why it's really actually easy for me to get a lot of these predictions correct. If you go back, when I did the breakdown of Tank Davis, Ryan Garcia, I said stoppage to the body. It's easy for me to make the prediction because I'm not emotionally invested in a fighter. As a 40-year-old plus adult man who wants to get on the internet and scream about what somebody did 11 years ago, this shit is just crazy to me. Congratulations to Tank Davis. Congratulations to Frank Martin. I just need to know from boxing fans, what are we actually looking for when we go to places like YouTube or Rumble or Twitter? What are we looking for? Are we looking for spaces and places that make us feel good about the things we already have an opinion about? Are we actually looking to learn about the sport of boxing? Are we actually looking to learn something about a fighter we may be unfamiliar with? Are we actually looking for the best fighters to be fighting the best fighters? Or we just want what we want? And then you go to channels that give you that thing that you're looking for, and they have to say things overtly like, I'm going to be childless or I'm going to be petty, because they understand the space in which they're operating from does not really lend much as far as value is concerned to the conversation. Frank Martin went out there. He looked very good, very strong, very sharp. Tank Davis was just better than him. And Frank Martin's power was good, but not great. If you can't keep Tank off of you with the lead hand and some level of variety, he will just walk you down and cook you. And that's what he did to Frank Martin, excuse me. So I want to hear from you guys. What's the deal? Why do we accept this in the sport of boxing? I can understand not being a fan of a fighter, but respecting what he does, or loving a fighter and then he take a bad loss and be like, damn, you know, he got to go back to the drawing board. He kind of operated funny style. I'm a huge Errol Spence fan. It was abundantly clear to me in that bout that, and I said this is already on the channel, Errol Spence prepared to just do what he normally does, and Bud Crawford and Bomac prepared to beat Errol Spence. That was abundantly clear, super obvious. Doesn't matter how I feel about the fighter. I didn't make a bunch of excuses. If you get your ass whooped, that's just kind of what happens. Even if the excuses could be considered legitimate, if you decide to get into the squared circle, wrap up, gloves on, bell rings, then whatever happens, happens. There's no getting around that. So I think it's shameful to wake up in the morning and decide I'm so bothered by the outcome of Gervonta Tank Davis brutally knocking out Frank Martin that I'm going to do a video of Gervonta Tank Davis getting beat up in sparring 11 years ago by a dude that just got cooked by a dude that Gervonta Tank Davis cooked.